Next up, we have my interview with New York Times bestselling author Doug Andrew. Doug Andrew is a financial advisor to the rich and famous, and my interview with him took me by surprise. Why? I had spoken to many financial advisors over my years as an entrepreneur, and the advice that he gave was pretty much 180 degrees opposite of what I heard in the past. But as he gave the advice, as he was talking about his strategies, it became apparent that he was 100% right, and I had gotten bad advice before. So I want you to lean in and listen to what Doug Andrew has to say. He gives this advice to very wealthy and famous people, and now he's about to give it to you. Doug, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. A lot of ground I want to cover, so I hope you're ready.
I am.
All right, good.
Thank you.
Good. There's so many things you know about in the realm of financial strategy, and I think it's going to touch a lot of areas that we delved into in this particular series. So let's just start with you first, though. How did you get into the type of work that you're doing?
Wow. Way back, about 50 years ago, my intention was actually to become an estate planning attorney. And as a means to that end, when I was at Brigham Young University, I got my insurance license and my Series 1 securities license to sell mutual funds and stocks and bonds and so forth. They don't even offer that license anymore. It was the granddaddy of them all. And so part-time, I went out and began to meet with clients, prospecting door to door and what have you. Even though it was tough, it ended up being something I fell in love with. In fact, I made 30 grand part-time my first year as I was a student, and I was in my junior year. The next year, I think I made 72,000 or something, and I think the professors were making 40,000 at the time, and I went into the dean, and my wife had been in the hospital in intensive care, had some serious surgeries, nearly passed away. In fact, technically did twice and came back. And so we ran up all these medical bills. So I had to put college on the back burner a few times, and I supported myself in the hours that I did have by going out and meeting with clients, helping them to optimize their financial assets. Well, he said, how much could you make if you were full-time? I said, 150, 200 grand. He goes, what are you doing in college? But I went out and I fell in love with it. I've never looked back. And I have been so blessed, Patrick, rubbing shoulders with some of the top entrepreneurial financial gurus in the world. And so I've learned a lot by osmosis. Yes, I went and got my schooling and all those degrees, but really I learned more from rubbing shoulders with brilliant minds.
And so you started on that track, you got out of school, went full-time. You were obviously earning a lot right out of the gates. If you look back on that now, did you know what you were doing back then?
Actually, I take a lot of pride in not recommending anything to anybody that I didn't own myself or that I had not sort of tried and proven. And so, yeah, I probably didn't know what I didn't know, because you can't be aware of something you're not aware of.
Right.
But what I was able to do is help people gain a lot of clarity. And of course, I felt more comfortable at first with younger people. What's so funny, Patrick, is half of my career, I couldn't wait until people would stop asking, are you old enough to know what you're doing? I thought, when am I going to finally be old enough so they don't ask that question?
Right.
That sweet spot lasted about 1 week, where I was, I guess, the perfect, because when I hit that midpoint, all of a sudden people started asking, are you going to be around when I retire? But I gleaned a ton going through and helping some very high net worth people and picking their brains, and then also becoming part of many mastermind groups.
Yes. So is there an overriding philosophy to what you do? I mean, that you'd say, this is just the lens I look through that kind of drives everything.
Yes. Most of what I do is not termed conventional wisdom, okay? And I help people optimize all of their assets on their financial balance sheet, but also their family balance sheet. And that's what probably makes my approach unique. My company is called Live Abundant. And the reason for that is For a lot of years, Patrick, people would come to me to optimize their financial assets and minimize taxes. I'm a tax strategist,
Right.
and I've saved people, hundreds of millions of dollars of unnecessary tax for causes that they support for their own family and what have you. Now, when these people would come in, oftentimes I would ask their background, their story, and how did you create this legacy of financial assets? And they would tell me, I grew up after the Great Depression and worked hard and went from rags to riches. And they'd say, man, my kids will never have to work as hard as I did. And 2 or 3 decades later, these people would come in after their adult children had moved back in a couple of times. And they would say, Doug, I don't even know what's wrong with my kids. They don't even know how to work. And I would say, maybe you stole that from them. Maybe in your effort to help your children, or now your grandchildren, you're actually hindering them. You're enabling them instead of empowering them. And they would do a double take. They say, well, what can I do? Because if I were a physician, I probably spent most of my career curing different types of diseases. Now, the word dis-ease means you're not at ease, dis-ease. And we think of that physically, okay? But people have a lot of financial dis-ease, and they follow the herd. So in answer to your question, when they're thinking about money, they're going out there, and many times they follow the herd, and they just almost get duped, I think, into, just sock away money in traditional tax-deferred IRAs and 401ks because you're going to be in a lower tax bracket when you retire. That has not been true or axiomatic for over 25 years. Do you know, Patrick, it took the financial services industry until just 3 years ago to finally admit that's been the wrong advice.
Wow.
Now, let me ask you a question. Do you know what a fiduciary is? Okay. A fiduciary is supposed to look out for their client's best interest ahead of their own, okay? And what bothers me sometimes is a fiduciary will hear the client say, yes, I'm doing very well, and I'm socking away all this money, and I've got $1 million or $5 million bucks, but now I'm going to retire. I'm not in a lower bracket. I thought that was the premise. They're in as higher tax bracket as they've ever been in. And so they go, was that good advice? Were you looking out for my best interest? Why didn't we do something different? So what I would help a lot of people do is cure the tax disease or that corner they painted themselves into to get their money out with the least tax consequence and convert it at least up to 60% of their retirement resources to vehicles that are tax-free, that are immune from the dangers of taxes, inflation, and market volatility.